I never imagined that something as simple as fasting could have such a profound spiritual impact. But what Jesus revealed to me changed everything. Have you ever wondered if there is something that can change your life, your family, and even the world around you? Something so powerful that it can alter entire generations? Today we are going to hear from someone who had a direct encounter with Jesus and received revelations that are touching people around the world. Nicole, could you tell us what Jesus revealed about biblical fasting and why it is so urgent? Hello, my name is Nicole Hudson. I am 45 years old and have worked as a registered nurse. Today my life has taken a completely different direction. I am a minister in Sacramento, California. And honestly, I never imagined I would be here sharing such a profound and transformative experience with you. What I am about to tell is more than a story. It is a testimony of something that changed my soul. It is about what I experienced in a near-death experience when Jesus showed me the impactful truth about fasting. And, believe me, what I discovered goes far beyond what any book or sermon could teach me. Have you ever wondered what really happens in the spiritual world when we fast? Or even what it means to connect with God on such a deep level that it feels like everything around you disappears? Well, I had my doubts too. I always saw fasting as something important, but what I experienced made me understand that it is much more than a spiritual practice. It is a direct bridge to the divine realm. Now, let's go back to the morning of September 12, 2023. It was a Tuesday. I was on the 7th day of a water-only fast. To many, it might seem extreme, but I felt I was being guided by the Holy Spirit to do it. And look, fasting has always been part of my spiritual life, but this experience had something special. I couldn't explain it, but it was as if there was a supernatural weight in every moment of that fast. Something I had never felt before. That morning I left home very early. It was 5:30 a.m., and I was on my way to the morning prayer meeting at our church. The streets were almost deserted, and the city seemed enveloped in a rare tranquility. A light rain was falling, something unusual for Sacramento. In September, I remember driving down Madison Avenue, listening to worship music, and silently talking to God. It was one of those moments when you feel such a deep connection with Him, as if the world around you no longer existed. And then, everything changed in a matter of seconds. A drunk driver, driving a pickup truck, ran a red light at high speed. He hit my car right on the driver's side. The impact was so violent that I didn't have time to react. Later, I learned that the accident caused severe internal bleeding, multiple organ failure, and that my heart stopped for exactly 17 minutes and 23 seconds. Now, imagine this. My heart stopped, my body motionless, the paramedics fighting to save me. But to me, all of that already seemed distant. In an instant, I was in the wrecked car. In the next, I felt as if my soul was being lifted from my body. It was like floating, an indescribable lightness. I could see everything. The accident scene was before me, but in a way that seemed much clearer, almost as if my senses were amplified. I saw the paramedics working frantically, trying to revive me. I saw the police organizing the traffic, and I also saw the young man who hit my car. He was sitting on the curb with his head in his hands, clearly in shock. And at that moment, I didn't feel anger towards him. All I felt was compassion. Then something extraordinary happened. The scene began to slowly fade away, like a veil unraveling, and I was pulled upward into what I can only describe as a tunnel of light. But this light, it wasn't just brightness. It was alive, pulsating, full of love. It was as if every particle of this light was filled with peace, and a divine presence that embraced me completely. There was no pain, no fear, just a love so deep that words cannot capture it. It was as if my entire being was being enveloped by something infinitely greater than myself. And it was at this moment that I began to understand the true meaning of fasting. It wasn't just a practice, but an act of total surrender, a way to empty oneself so that God could fill every part of you. This experience completely transformed me. It made me realize that there is much more happening in the spiritual realm than we can imagine. And now I want to share all of this with you, because if I learned anything, it's that God always has something new to reveal to us. We just need to be willing to listen. As I traveled through that tunnel, I realized something extraordinary. I was no longer in my physical body, but that didn't scare me. On the contrary, I felt more alive, more real than I had ever felt before in my entire life. My spiritual senses were so heightened that I seemed capable of perceiving things I never knew existed. It was as if every part of me was connected to something much greater. Suddenly, I was taken to a place I can only describe as the outer courts of heaven. The vision was of indescribable beauty. The colors seemed to have a life of their own, so vibrant they couldn't exist on Earth. There was music that filled the entire space around me, as if it came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and a light. Oh, that light! It was brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt the eyes. On the contrary, it brought a sense of peace and welcome. But what really captured my attention was what was happening between heaven and earth. From where I was, it was possible to see golden threads of light extending from earth towards heaven. These threads were not random. They were spiritual pathways created by people who were fasting and praying. It was as if I was looking at a spiritual map, where each bright connection represented a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Then, I heard a voice. It was Jesus. There was no doubt. Even before seeing him, I knew it was him. His voice was both powerful and full of love, resonating deeply within me. Nicole, I brought you here to show you what your eyes have not seen, and your ears have not heard. And then he appeared. I can't find enough words to describe his presence. It was as if every painting or image I had ever seen of Jesus had only scratched the surface of the truth. He was infinitely more. His presence radiated waves of love, authority, and power. When I looked into his eyes, I felt as if he could see every part of me. The good, the bad, the mistakes, the struggles. And yet, he loved me completely with a love so pure, so deep, that it seemed almost overwhelming. "Observe," he said, and suddenly I was transported into a series of visions that would forever change my understanding of fasting. The first vision was about how fasting impacts the spiritual world. I saw that when someone fasts sincerely, it creates a rupture in a dark spiritual mantle that seemed to cover the earth. Through these openings, the light and power of heaven could flow freely, illuminating everything around. Many of my children, Jesus explained, do not understand the power they have through fasting. When you fast with a pure heart, seeking me and my kingdom, you become a partner of heaven. And this partnership has an impact you can't even imagine. Then he showed me my own fast, the one I was doing before the accident. Each day of fasting was strengthening a spiritual connection between heaven and earth, as if it was building a bridge. It was like watching a spiritual muscle develop, growing stronger and stronger. I saw that my prayers during the fast had a much greater impact than I could imagine. They broke spiritual barriers that would otherwise take years to overcome. After that, Jesus took me to a place he called the Halls of Time. There, I saw how throughout history, so many believers had undertaken deep fasts. I saw Moses during his 40 days of fasting, receiving the 10 Commandments. But now I could see the spiritual forces at work at that moment. These visions were not just revealing, they were transformative. They made me understand that fasting is not just a spiritual practice, but a divine tool that connects us directly to the power of God. And now, I want to share this with you. Moses' fast was something that literally created a space in the spiritual realm where the glory of God could manifest fully. This manifestation allowed him to receive the 10 Commandments. At that moment, I clearly saw how fasting opened a portal between heaven and earth, allowing the divine presence to pour out tangibly. After that, I saw Daniel in his times of fasting. It was impressive to observe how his fasting, not only strengthened his own spiritual connection, but also literally pushed away evil spiritual forces that were acting over large regions. Daniel was not just praying. He was changing entire atmospheres in the spiritual world. And then I saw something even deeper. I was shown how, throughout history, countless unknown believers fasted faithfully, without ever realizing the real impact of their actions. I saw how their prayers and fasts changed entire courses of events, averted tragedies, and brought victories they might never have understood during their lives. Nicole, Jesus said with calm and loving authority, I am showing you these things because my church is entering a time where understanding the power of fasting will be essential. The battles to come cannot be won with regular prayer alone. Fasting needs to be restored to its rightful place as a spiritual weapon of power. And at that moment, Jesus showed me something that touched me deeply. He revealed how collective fasting, where groups of believers come together to fast and pray, creates an extraordinary spiritual force. I saw how these group fasts generated something that looked like true spiritual storms of power. These combined forces created a moment of spiritual transformation, so intense that they could completely change the course of entire cities, even nations. I was shown that in the times to come, this type of collective fasting will be crucial to achieving breakthroughs in situations that would otherwise be impossible. But daughter, Jesus warned, not all fasts have the same impact in the spiritual realm. And then he revealed something that made me reflect deeply. I saw fasts done with the wrong intention, for appearance, to fulfill a ritual, or out of religious obligation, and their spiritual impact was almost non-existent. But on the other hand, I saw fasts carried out with humility, genuine repentance, and a heart truly turned to God. These fasts created incredible spiritual energy, breaking barriers and bringing heaven to manifest on earth. Then he showed me something I had never imagined. Jesus revealed how fasting not only affects our spiritual life momentarily, but also transforms something deeper, our spiritual DNA. I saw that when we fast, our spiritual senses are amplified and gain greater sensitivity. Prolonged fasts, in particular, created new spiritual pathways, allowing people to operate at much higher levels of discernment and spiritual authority. Even after the fasting period ended, many of my children, said Jesus, believe fasting is to convince me to act. But fasting is not about convincing me. It is about aligning yourself with me and what I am already doing. When you fast, you tune your spiritual frequency to the frequency of heaven, and in that alignment, miracles happen. After that, Jesus showed me how fasting directly influences spiritual warfare. I saw believers in fasting who seemed dressed in powerful spiritual armor, an additional protection that gave them special strength. Their prayers were precise weapons, hitting targets with surprising efficiency and power. But there was also a warning. Jesus showed me how the enemy seeks to attack people during fasting, because he knows the spiritual impact this practice can have. Protection during fasting is essential, Jesus emphasized. Remain under the cover of my blood and my word. Do not fast in your own strength or understanding. Depend on me. Finally, Jesus showed me something even more impressive. I saw how fasting increases our spiritual authority. Each day of sincere fasting seemed like a promotion in the spiritual realm. It was like watching someone receive a new rank, a new level of authority in prayer and spiritual battle. I understood that fasting not only brings us closer to God, but also equips us to face the battles to come with renewed strength. These revelations changed my life, and I hope they can change yours too. The words of these people had a special weight in the spiritual realm, as if they were clothed with authority. Their prayers were not just heard, they made something happen. It was then that Jesus explained something profound to me. Remember, Nicole, this authority is not earned, it is a gift. Fasting positions you to carry this greater authority, but the true source of it is me. After that, he showed me something that looked like spiritual warehouses, which he called spiritual reservoirs. It was fascinating to observe how fasting built these reservoirs, which stored spiritual provisions that could be accessed in moments of future need. I saw people who made fasting a constant practice, accumulating such large spiritual reserves that when they faced difficult times, they had the strength and spiritual resources to overcome any challenge. But what deeply touched my heart was when Jesus showed me how fasting transforms worship. During periods of fasting, worship seemed to ascend to heaven with a special fragrance. It was as if the sacrifice of fasting added a precious element to our prayers and praises. I saw how this created something unique, a praise that seemed to harmonize perfectly with heavenly music. "When my children worship while fasting," said Jesus, "it creates a symphony with the worship in heaven. The sacrifice of praise combined with the sacrifice of fasting carries a unique power." Right after, he showed me something that brought a weight to my soul. I saw that we are entering times of great challenge, where understanding the power of fasting will be essential. The trials to come cannot be faced with common prayers alone. I saw how future battles would require God's people to operate at levels of spiritual authority that can only be reached through prayer combined with fasting. "The times ahead," Jesus said seriously, "require my people to be spiritually prepared. Fasting will not be a choice, it will be a necessity. It is a spiritual weapon that must be understood and used wisely." Then he showed me how fasting breaks spiritual chains. These chains represented addictions, oppressions, and even generational curses that kept people bound. It was impressive to see how, when someone fasts and prays with faith and pure intentions, these chains began to weaken until they finally broke. What followed deeply moved me. Jesus revealed that when we fast, we are actually joining his ministry of intercession. It is as if we join him in his ongoing work of praying for humanity. Most surprisingly, I saw that this brought joy to his heart, a real, almost tangible joy. He rejoiced to see his children choosing to deny themselves to collaborate with his eternal purposes. "Nicole," he said with tenderness and firmness, "when my children fast with pure hearts, it moves my heart. It is not about earning my love, because you already have it completely. It is about aligning with me and my purposes in deeper ways." Finally, Jesus showed me something surprising. I saw how fasting unlocks spiritual inheritances. It was as if fasting cleared out old wells full of debris, allowing long-forgotten spiritual springs to flow again. Some of these spiritual inheritances had been blocked for generations, but people's fasting was restoring access to these blessings. And then he showed me bridges, spiritual bridges that fasting builds. These bridges connected the spiritual realm to the physical, bringing blessings and answers that changed lives. And there, at that moment, I understood that fasting is not just a practice. It is an act of faith that connects us directly to the heart and purposes of God. These spiritual bridges were impressive. They connected different aspects of God's work, creating true highways for his power to flow freely. It was fascinating to see how someone's fast, done with sincerity, could build connections that God would use long after the fast had ended. It was like planting spiritual seeds that sprouted in unexpected times and places. It was then that Jesus revealed something extraordinary about fasting and spiritual multiplication. He showed me how, when we fast with pure and intentional hearts, God multiplies the spiritual impact in ways we can't even begin to imagine. I saw the fast of a single person create waves in the spiritual realm that expanded to affect entire communities. These waves didn't stop. They continued reverberating for generations, transforming lives far beyond the immediate reach of that person. The spiritual impact of fasting, Jesus explained, often goes far beyond what you can perceive in the physical realm. Often, the most significant fruits of your fasting will only be revealed in eternity. He also showed me how fasting is deeply connected to spiritual timing. We don't always fast to obtain an immediate answer. Often, God calls us to fast to prepare us for something he knows is coming, even if we can't yet understand it. I saw how fasting strengthened people spiritually, preparing them for challenges they never imagined they would face. In the times to come, Jesus said firmly, my children will need to learn to fast, not just in response to crises, but as preparation for what I know is coming. Fasting will be an essential tool for spiritual preparation. After that, he showed me how fasting directly affects our spiritual discernment. It was as if fasting adjusted our antenna, tuning it perfectly to the heavenly frequency. I saw how people who made fasting a constant practice developed a much greater sensitivity to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. They could pick up divine signals and directions with a clarity that seemed impossible without this practice. But the most transformative was when Jesus showed me how fasting deepens our intimacy with him. He made me feel how fasting created a special space within us, a space where his presence can dwell more deeply and transformatively. Fasting, he said, is not just about spiritual power or breaking barriers. It is about knowing me more deeply, creating communion, and allowing my presence to transform you from the inside out. When my time in heaven was coming to an end, Jesus shared with me one last message that was etched into my soul. He showed me that we are entering challenging times and that understanding the power of fasting will be more important than ever. I saw how God is calling his people back to biblical fasting as an essential preparation for the days to come. Tell them what you have seen, he commanded with love and authority. Tell them I am calling my church back to biblical fasting. The time is short, and my people need to understand these truths. Before everything disappeared, Jesus looked at me with such love and tenderness that it seemed my spirit could not contain that emotion. His final words echoed in my heart. Remember, Nicole, the power is not in the fasting itself. The power is in me. Fasting is just the means by which you align yourself with what I am already doing and what I already desire to accomplish. The next thing I remember was opening my eyes in the hospital. Around me, doctors and nurses were perplexed, with expressions of disbelief. They couldn't understand how I was alive after being clinically declared dead for more than 17 minutes. And even more surprising, I had no brain damage, no trauma sequelae. They called it a miracle, and they were right. But the true magnitude of what happened, only I knew. When I thought God had already revealed everything I needed to know through my first near-death experience, he had something even deeper to teach me. This happened about 3 months after my first Eid, during an intense period of fasting and prayer. This time, there was no accident or external situation. It was something inexplicable, what doctors would later call a cardiac event, with no apparent cause. It happened while I was praying in my room, alone with God. My heart stopped for exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. But in those few minutes, something extraordinary happened. I was again transported to that indescribable realm of living light. As soon as I arrived, I felt a clear purpose. God had more to show me, something essential that I needed to understand about fasting. Jesus was there as before, radiating love, power, and unmistakable authority. But this time, there was something different in his presence. He was closer, almost like an intimate friend, ready to share something precious. Nicole, he said, I brought you back to show you the fruit of what you have learned and shared. Suddenly, a vision took shape before me. It was as if I was looking at a spiritual panorama, a broad view of the impact the testimony about fasting had generated. I saw streams of light, the same spiritual channels I had seen before, now multiplying around the world. Each stream represented a person who, upon hearing what Jesus showed me, began to understand and practice biblical fasting. Look, he said. And then I saw lives being transformed in ways that left me speechless. I saw people being freed from addictions that had held their souls for years. I saw miraculous healings happening, bringing new life to bodies once marked by pain. I saw families and relationships being restored. But what really touched my heart was witnessing the intimate moments these people had with Jesus during their fasts. Each sacrifice, each meal renounced created a special space where deep communion with him could flourish. Do you understand? Jesus asked, his voice full of love. What I showed you was not just for you. It was for my church, my beloved bride. Every truth you shared planted seeds. Now those seeds are flourishing, and the fruit is greater than you can imagine. Then he showed me something that made me cry with emotion. Every time someone applied the truths about fasting in their life, it created an effect in the spiritual realm, waves that not only impacted the person, but also future generations. These waves were building something powerful, something that looked like a revival, preparing the world for a greater work of God. The times to come, Jesus said with a tone of urgency, will require my people to walk in levels of spiritual authority they have never experienced before. What I showed you about fasting is not just an option. It is an essential preparation for what is to come. Then, he showed me how the collective understanding of fasting was creating a totally new spiritual dynamic in his church. As more and more people began to understand and practice biblical fasting, their spiritual authority combined, pushing back the darkness in ways that had never happened before. Tell them again, Jesus said, this time with deep authority. But now, speak with the conviction of someone who has seen the fruits. Tell them I am calling my church back to biblical fasting, not as a ritual or obligation, but as preparation for the greatest outpouring of my Spirit they have ever witnessed. And with those words, Jesus looked at me with a love so deep that it seemed my spirit could not contain it. Remember, Nicole, he said, the power is not in the fasting itself. It is in me. Fasting is just the means by which you align yourself with what I am already doing and what I desire to accomplish. When I returned to myself, I was lying in a hospital room. The medical staff seemed astonished. They couldn't believe I was alive after more than 4 minutes without vital signs. Even more surprising, there was no damage to my heart or brain. They called it a miracle. And what really happened goes far beyond what they could comprehend. Jesus showed me something I will never forget. Each person who embraced the truths about fasting became like a spiritual beacon, radiating light in the midst of darkness. It was such a powerful vision. I saw how this light pushed the darkness away, protecting families, transforming communities, and even influencing entire nations. But Jesus made sure to emphasize something fundamental. The power is not in the fasting itself. The true power comes from God's faithfulness in honoring the humble sacrifice of his children. Remember this, Nicole, he said, as my heavenly experience was about to end. I did not show these things just for you to understand. I showed them so you could help my people understand. The time is shorter than they think, and my church needs to be prepared. Then, just before everything began to fade away, he gave me one last message full of love and urgency. Tell them that I do not call them to fast to earn my love. They already have it completely. I am calling them to fast because I want to entrust them with my power. The darkness is increasing, but through prayer and fasting, my light in them will shine even brighter. When I returned to my body for the second time, I felt an absolute certainty about the purpose of these experiences. Everything God showed me about fasting was not just true. It was deeply real, confirmed both in the scriptures and in the lives of believers who had already begun to apply these truths. This second experience was not just a confirmation, but a calling. I was filled with a deeper conviction than ever before. Jesus is calling his church to rediscover the power of biblical fasting. And this is not to manipulate God or to try to earn his favor. No, it is about positioning oneself to be an active partner of heaven, especially in these critical times. Now think with me. The question is not whether Jesus is calling us to fast. That is clearer than ever. The real question is how you will respond. Will you heed Jesus' call to prepare through prayer and fasting? Are you willing to embrace this spiritual tool? Or will you let fear, fatigue, or complacency hold you back? If you are hearing this now, believe me, it is not by chance. Jesus is speaking directly to your heart. He is inviting you to a deeper understanding of fasting, not as a burden or religious obligation, but as a unique opportunity to align with heaven. Don't let anything stop you from taking this step. The spiritual realm is more real than anything we can see with our physical eyes, and through biblical fasting, we have the chance to become partners of heaven, impacting not only our own lives but generations to come. The moment is now. Jesus' call is clear. He is waiting. The question is, will you respond? Nicole, thank you so much for sharing this transformative experience with us. What you have lived and the revelations you received are a direct call to all of us. The message is clear. Fasting is not just a spiritual practice. It is an opportunity to align ourselves with God's purposes, to be partners of heaven in such a crucial time. Your words remind us that even amid the growing darkness around us, the light of Jesus can shine even brighter in us. I also want to thank each of you who stayed until the end of this video. This shows that you have a thirst for something greater, for a deeper connection with God. May you be greatly blessed for this time invested in listening and reflecting. May the Holy Spirit touch each heart and bring direction, strength, and peace to face the challenges to come. If this message touched you, share it with someone who also needs to hear it. And remember, Jesus is calling. The time to respond is now. God bless you and see you in the next video.